So I want to use a parable that Jesus used to illustrate um, how important people are. And we're going to use it to learn about the power of language. Now, you've probably heard the story before, but I want to use it and apply it to this particular issue of cherishing our language. Out of Luke 15, it starts in verse 1. Now, the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him. And the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." Now, before we even get to the part that I want to use, did you see the power of language in play? I mean, even in the description of this story, it said that all were drawing near to hear him. Now, can you imagine having that kind of language ethos? That kind of character of language coming out of your life, like we read out of John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word had the power to create, and life was given to men, and light in the middle of the darkness. Did you hear that Jesus had the kind of language ethos that people just came to hear him? And could you imagine that in your life? That people are just drawn to hear what you have got to say to them. And I'm not just talking about a crowd. I'm talking about your kids, your wife, your husband, your coworkers. That people would be drawn to you to not to do anything for them, but just to hear the language that comes out of your life because it does something inside of them. It's also interesting that Luke classifies the language ethos of the Pharisees, and he uses this word grumbling. Now, grumbling means this. It means to complain throughout. Wow. Now, that's a whole different kind of ethos. And so I think we got a comparison here. We've got one ethos being created by Jesus, one language ethos, the character of community that he's creating through his language that draws people. And then we have this other kind of way of communicating that the Pharisees do, where it is complaining throughout. Now, let me just ask you to do a little bit of inventory here. Is which one of these do you find yourself falling into? Do you find yourself that when you talk to your kids, your loved ones, your relationships, your coworkers, whoever's around you begins to be drawn in to encounter you? Or are the things that come out of our mouths a complaint throughout? That we're always complaining about everything that goes on in life, or what that person did, or how they never understand, or what the kids did all day, or how work's not going right. It kind of reminded me when I thought of this grumbling and I thought of this to complain throughout. It reminded me of the creek that's right next to the church. It has become a stormwater runoff ditch, but it's called Church Creek. And sure, there are some fish in there, and there's some greenish-looking things that are growing in there. But when you look at the health of the creek, or what was called the creek, it's been what I would say grumbled. It has been complained throughout, meaning that there has been things that have been put into it that have changed the definition from a life-giving creek to this thing that has just totally been compromised. There's fish in there, but I wouldn't eat anything that I caught in there. So it makes me ask the question, is my language a life-giving creek, or is it a stormwater runoff ditch? Is it always just filled with complaints and the next issue that got you angry, the next thing that got you mad, and how somebody disappointed you, and throughout, just the waters of your language are constantly just complaint throughout?